Yeah, I lost you, brother. Come on. Yeah, yeah. My negative. Yeah, my apophatic. My apophatic argument. Forgot. Right. So yeah, it goes something like this: if the non-existence of God doesn't exist, then God necessarily exists. The non-existence of God doesn't exist, therefore God necessarily exists. Now, the definition of God here is the identity of perfection. Now, if someone challenges the identity of perfection by saying, "What do you mean by perfect?" You say that X which possesses all positive properties Y. You need a technical definition. X is what is being identified. X marks the spot. Okay? God is that X that marks the spot, meaning God is the name for X. And what makes it what it is that its essence possesses all positive properties to which we allocate the term Y. So you take the bundle of all positive properties, you put them in the set X, the term for which becomes God. The definition of which, when explicated, is the identity of perfection. Now, it doesn't, if they try to actually push the argument further beyond that, they commit definitional retreat and you beat them. They must engage premise one or they must engage premise two. If they try to reject premise one, to say, if the non existence of God doesn't exist, God necessarily exists. If they state that I reject that premise, the burden of proof becomes on them, where they have to explain why do they reject the law of identity, because premise one is just the law, is just arguing for the conditionality of the law of identity phrased in the middle. And if they reject the law of identity, they've rejected the very standard by which their entitlement to reject the proposition is premised, and they falsify their right to reject premise one. Okay? If they say they reject premise two, then they reject the principle of double negation, which is just the inverse of the law of identity. So they reject the law of identity at the foundation of their own argument, and subsequently their argument collapses, which means the conclusion necessarily follows. If they reject the identity of perfection, then they're as a consistent definition, then they're rejecting perfection as a category. But because their own argument is perfectly self-identical, it is a performative tautology of the existence of perfection in at least one respect, falsifying empirically their right to actually claim that the identity of perfection doesn't exist, and it falsifies on pain of contradiction. If they try to push past that, you just get into that X which possesses all positive properties Y. And if they say that doesn't necessarily exist, they argue against the very existence of the ground to which all positive properties must necessitate in order to have existence in themselves, and they falsify themselves. So either way that they move through, and then anything past that point, you just click them on definitional retreat and you beat them. Sure. So, well, with informal debate structures, people say, well, I'm just asking clarifying questions. But clarifying questions is a difference without a distinction from filibustering. Filibustering in the political discourse is continuing to actually probe so you don't have to get around to admitting a point. It's just a procrastination strategy to stave off inevitable falsification, pass the bell. So definitional retreat is doing what you can to ask a person to define, to define, to define, to define, to define, so that they never get around to evading the point. And they're hoping effectively that at some point you're going to actually give a bad definition, and then they're going to attack you on that definition to falsify the proposition. So definitional retreat has been something that's been added to logical discourse in order to prevent logical cowardice, and in order to prevent argumentum ad malefides, so that people have to engage the premises, so that a clear winner and a clear loser can be pronounced. And this is something you find like atheist thinkers doing all the fucking time, all the time. They're all like, no, it's not even just ask questions so they find something they can attack. If you start giving sound arguments, they start retreating from that by probing for more definitions, hoping that they get like a weakness. So in many different instances, you'll see me on threads, you'll see me on like debating atheists and go, well, what do you mean by this? And I know my terms inside and out because I'm autistic and I fucking know all my terms. I study language. I'm an idiot. So in this particular instance, I clip them. But the average person doesn't have that savant-like quality to know what the meanings of terms are because they haven't spent like dozens or 100 hours studying language. So it normally works against people who are less philosophically robust. But if you need to actually be capable of defending yourself and you don't necessarily have my skill set, you can evoke definitional retreat is by saying, dude, you're just evoking definitional retreat to not engage my premises. If you keep this up, I'm just going to win by default. It's kind of like someone who gets into a fight with Mike Tyson, but they run all over the ring and Mike Tyson never gets a chance to hit them, but they run all over the ring to prevent Mike from closing in and crushing him. It's kind of like that. It's a thing. No, it's not even the only right system. It's the only system at all to which wrong and right can be sorted as different. Sure, it's the only. So if you have an idea that's wrong, and if you have an idea that's right, where does this wrong idea exist, and where does this right idea exist? In your mind, right? Yeah, in your mind. But is your wrong idea made out of the same stuff as your mind is made out of? Yes. Is your right idea made out of the same substance as your mind is made of? Yes. So that means even though they are wrong and right and they are mutually exclusive at the epistemic and ontological level to which they occur, there is still a deeper ontological level to which they're compatible. And at that deeper ontological level to which they're compatible, they are crucified one into another, so they share an identicality. And that ameliorates the contradiction between them at a more fundamental level. My system is that universal ground of spirit, that universal ground of consciousness, to which all propositions, true or false, necessitate in common for them to even be thinkable, let alone sayable. Yeah, well, what do you have a better term for it? I can't think of. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's what it is in my system. I can't think of a better term for a consciousness that exists everywhere outside of space and time. Right. No, no, I got you. I can tell. And you're always welcome to come back. I like you anyway. Yeah. Hmm. No, no, I'm not. I'm not. The model itself is in phenomenology explicitly Trinitarian, but in numenology it's explicitly Unitarian. So it unifies the Islamic God with the Christian God without contradiction. Not even that. Not even that. What it was so, in my opinion, the primary feature of apocalyptic mythorealism is that it ends war between religions if you understand the system. If you understand the system, there's no reason to go to war as a Christian with a Muslim. There's no reason to go to war with Christian, and there's no reason to go to war with Muslims as a Christian. There's no reason to have that fight. You start to find out that you're just arguing about how God approaches human understanding at different epistemic and ontic levels. That's it. So God might be Trinitarian God might be Trinitarian in a hyper real modality, but he would be Unitarian in a mytho real modality. And when Muslims say that God is one, they're speaking about what God is at the mytho real. When Christians are speaking that God is three persons, one God, they're speaking of what God is at the hyper real. When you have all these different, when you have like pagans say that there's a number or plurality of gods, they're just demonstrating how God manifests at the level of the anti-real. So it systematically calibrates and harmonizes all the ways to which God can conceptually rendered in language. And then it provides a series of intermediating grammatical steps so that they become systematically cross-communicable. And the logic can be translated from one domain into another domain without information loss. I've been doing it my whole life, so I better be doing it. Yeah, A-E-I-N-O. A-E-I-N-O. Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, let's just say for the sake of argument, I go, yo, homie, like what the fuck? You always drink all the beer. I say that. That's an A proposition. Okay? Why? Because I'm saying what you do all the time without exception. Now, if I say Frank never drinks all the bud, that's an E proposition because there's no instance to which he ever drinks all, or Frank never drinks any of the bud. If there's no instance to which Frank drinks it ever, then that's an E proposition. If I say there are some instances to which you have it, then that's an I proposition. And I say there's some instances to which you don't have it, then that's an O proposition. Now, an A proposition, P, is disjunct an E proposition, which is not P. So these are called contradictories. Subcontraries would be that which is diagonal across from an A proposition to an O proposition, or an E proposition to an I proposition. These are called subcontraries. And then you have something called what's called complements, which are directly underneath some. So that a proposition that is an E proposition is compatible with an I proposition, but an E proposition is never compatible with, but an I proposition is never compatible with an E proposition. An O proposition is always compatible with an E proposition, but it's never compatible with an A proposition. Now, within this system of propositional structures, you have complements, contradictories, and subcontraries. The transformation rules mediate the interactions between these propositional structures. So what you do is that you load argumentative structures like modus ponens or modus tollens using these propositional forms, and these propositional forms intermediated by these rules are governed by syntactical laws, which are syntactical laws, and the syntactical laws of logic are called four laws of logic. And then you just put people in the system, you just kick the shit out of them by staying in the square of oppositions. That's it. Sure. That's a more phenomenologically nuanced argument. So A propositions correspond with what we call cataphonic phenomenology. E propositions correspond with what we call apophonic phenomenology. I propositions coincide with what we would call epiphonic phenomenology. And O propositions correspond with what we call dyaphatic phenomenology. But they are all phenomenologies. So A, E, I, and O, I had to come up with a conceptual name for all these phenomenologies together. They all ground in what's called doxophonic phenomenology. So doxophonic phenomenology would be pre-differentiated brute experience. It would be revelation in itself that differentiates into these four different categories of phenomenology, which express themselves and concretize into the propositions which are substantively identical with the actual phenomenology that spawns them. So they're consubstantial with this. So this actually eliminates the distance between statements and their objects, making the statements actually and ontologically touch their objects, meaning that you could state the truth directly. So it makes the truth directly stateable. It's coming out right now. This is gonna be done within the next few weeks. So I found a way to make truth directly stateable and directly perceivable. No, I'm just gonna fucking put it up. I'm just gonna publish the damn thing independently. I'm gonna get myself a publisher. I have a publisher lined up, and then I'm gonna have it in bookstores. We're gonna go from there. Yeah, there's gonna be all of that, but I don't think I want to put it into PDF because like the book is gorgeous. And what I mean by gorgeous is that like the text is gonna be like this hardcover thing. It's gonna be hardcover. It's going to be a pricey book because I'm going to make the book for sale like $70, $75 because it's going to be a textbook. But it's going to be one that you treasure and you covet and that you study your whole life. It's got gorgeous images in it. It's gorgeously written. Everything about it is beautiful. So I don't want it to just simply be a book that people pick up, they dog ear, they throw it around. I want it to be like, I wanted to write the book as if it were a literary masterpiece and a work of art that also is philosophical, like a work of philosophical genius. And it achieves that. So it's gonna be. It's gonna be. Yeah, reach out, reach out. So if anybody wants to come, you're welcome. So if you guys are actually interested in learning this system, I call it omniconsistent logic. If you guys are actually interested in learning this system, I call it omniconsistent logic. And omniconsistent logic is something that you can learn. I could teach it to you. You just get to using it and you just start smashing people in debates. They're not going to be able to beat you. They're not going to be able to beat you. So just let me know. Otherwise, if you guys don't, if nobody else wants to come up, I'm just going to basically crash out of the live. I think we might be done here. Yeah. The atheists are low-tier trash. You don't need